Hello, I'm Nancy. Welcome to my channel. As you can see by today's title, grief has hit once again. I have learned a lot about grief over the past almost 4 years now. And yes, I've had other people to die during my lifetime. But after Joe departing for heaven, I have had a close-up and personal extensive learning experience about grief. As you may remember, if you have listened to many of my videos, I spent the first year living without Joe, waiting to die. We had been together 60 years, so I could not even imagine living a life without him. I functioned, I attended church, I preached and I taught in prisons and reentry programs. But then I came home to sit and wait. As I was coming up on that first anniversary of his departure, I thought, well, I guess I just have to stay a bit longer. One of my sons and one of my daughters-in-law was encouraging me to get some grief counseling. I didn't feel like I needed any one-on-one counseling. I was functioning. I was pretty much doing what I had to do. But I did decide that I would sign up for the national program called Grief Share. Had nothing else better to do with my time, so I could attend those classes. And I'm so thankful for that program and the people that was in my particular group. It helped me to put words to what I was experiencing. And I learned through others that grief is different for each person. I do remember one woman in my group whose husband had died 3 years earlier. I wondered at that time why she was still experiencing grief. Thankfully, I kept my mouth shut, and I learned some things through her testimony. So here I am, almost 4 years into my solo living, and for the most part, I'm functioning, I'm living a productive life, and I'm completing what God has called me to do. And thinking about Joe and our life together in a good way. Our church has started a new ministry for older folks. As a whole, we are a younger body of believers. And they didn't want to feel like the older folks was just being pushed to the side with all the youth, young adult, youth, and children's activities. So they appointed a couple in our church as senior pastors to focus on the needs of the elderly. And so they scheduled our first supper together. I am not a sociable person. I'm basically an introvert. I like being at home, and I like being alone. But I did want to support what the church is trying to do, so I signed up. I went to church that morning and told my friends that I was attending the supper that night. I went home, had lunch, took myself a nap. When I woke up, grief hit. I was walking into an event where couples would be attending together, gathering together. And for a moment, I thought about not going. But there again, I have learned not to give into emotion. And that day, grief was a raging emotion. I was not going to give into it. So I pressed on. I left the house. I parked the car. I walked into church. And what did I have to do next? I had to sign in, and I had to state my marital status. Oh my goodness. Again, grief. As I stood at that table, I almost felt paralyzed. But then I took courage and I wrote, married. For you see, that's how I see myself. I am Joe Taylor's wife, whether he's still living here or he's living on the other side. And I am not on the lookout for another man in my life. I lived that life. It was the life I desired. I had that. I had a husband who loved me, and I had a family. Still have that family. Some may be looking to get a second spouse, and that's fine for them. It's okay. It's just not my desire, and it's not my plan for the remainder of my days. So I laughed to myself as I thought away, thinking, somebody is going to read that and be perplexed. What? Married? I thought her husband died. It gave me a good laugh in the midst of my grief. But then I walk in and I see the tables. Some are already full of couples sitting together, and my mind whirled. I see these same couples every Sunday at church sitting together. But I've gotten used to that. That's in church. That's a different setting. Now we were in a social setting, and I was feeling alone. So I went immediately to a table that nobody was sitting at, and I sat down. I wasn't there but a minute when one of my best friends called me over and said, "Come sit here, I saved you a seat." So I got up and I moved to her table. God is so good to me. I was able to sit between her and a male friend whose wife recently has moved on to heaven. We all knew each other. We all expected nothing from each other than to just be. I don't talk to my family much about my grief. I know that they miss Joe too, but they are living their own lives, their own busy lives. And what may be just a moment of grief for me, or a day of grief for me, it passes, and then I walk on in life. I just don't want I don't want my family to think that I'm sitting here alone in the midst of my grief, deteriorating slowly, day by day. I have learned that through grief, that though grief can hit, even when you're living a busy life, you can get through it. And I will say, while I'm talking about grief, I'm not talking about a morbid emotion. I would not call Joe back here to earth even if I could. He lived his life. He completed his work for God, and he moved on. I realize now that he's living in another place. He is not laying in the grave where his body is resting. He, the real him, the real Joe Taylor, is living his life in heaven now. I like to think about that. It brings a smile to my face. I've talked about being eternity-minded in other videos, so I won't go back over that in this one. But I think it's a good mindset for someone living out these elder years. I believe that each of us is here for such a time as this. We are to complete God's plan for our lives, live out our own dreams and goals, and then depart for the other side. This makes me happy. Today, I'm enjoying being happy, even if grief can hit in a moment of time. If you're enjoying my videos, do me a favor. Please like and subscribe. And check out each of my playlists when you have a chance. Thank you for watching, and we'll be together again soon.